Today we'll be reviewing Vicious by V.E. Schwab. Vicious is the first book in the Villain series. It's a fantasy science fiction novel. It is written by V.E. Schwab and was published in 2013. So let's start off with a synopsis. I'm going to read the synopsis on the back of the book and not the synopsis on places like Goodreads, just to avoid any kind of potential spoilers. The synopsis on the back of the book is really short, and the one on Goodreads is pretty long and has reveals a lot of plot points. Victor and Eli started out as college roommates, brilliant, arrogant, lonely boys who recognized the same sharpness and ambition in each other. In their senior year, a shared research interest in adrenaline, near-death experiences, and seemingly supernatural events reveals an intriguing possibility that under the right conditions, someone could develop extraordinary abilities. But when their thesis moves from the academic to the experimental, things go horribly wrong. This book reminded me of a comic book that focused on villains that was converted into a novel. So let's get into what I liked. This book focuses a lot on character development. Each character is fleshed out really well, their story unravels at a decent pace, and it focuses on this group of characters, and the people outside you don't really hear a lot from. And that kind of speaks to the powers that they have and the way that they view the world. To me, that they didn't really pay attention to what else was going on because of the power that they had. And if people like this actually existed, that's how I think they would probably behave. This book is not your classic good versus evil. There's a quote in the book that one of the characters says, and there's no spoilers here, but the character says, "There are no good men in this game." And that is exactly right. This is not a typical good versus evil. The lines aren't drawn black and white. The characters are all gray, and you understand where each character is coming from, and you even flip-flop back and forth to which one is the good or bad character. Whose intentions are pure, whose intentions are correct. That all depends on your perspective and the sympathy that you get for each character and based on their backstories and their philosophies. Every character has different positions, different thoughts, and different philosophies, and you understand why from their backstories. Because all the characters are flawed, that makes the story more interesting to me. I love those kind of stories. I don't really enjoy the black and white versions of every character, the good versus evil. I enjoy the gray area these characters walk, and that makes the story intriguing to me. The two main characters have an interesting friendship or bond together, and it gave me some serious Interview with the Vampire, Louis and Lestat vibes. Schwab's writing is very cinematic. It pops off the page. You can see it vividly in your mind. The best way I can describe it is cinematic. It's almost like reading a movie, because some of the environments and the visuals, you can see them clearly in your mind, and I was impressed with that. The story unravels at a very decent pace. There really aren't any slow points. It is a bit of a slow burn, but there really aren't any unnecessary parts of the story. Now let's get into what I didn't like. So when I finished this book, I put it down and I was pretty happy with it. And then I thought back to the major plot points and what I would tell to someone who didn't know anything about the book if they wanted to know the whole story. And I realized that I could tell them the whole book, basically cover to cover, in about a minute. The story does unravel at a nice pace, but there's not major twists and turns. You could probably tell somebody the whole book in about a minute. That's not to say it's not interesting, but there aren't many major developments in the story. One of the side characters has an ability that changes the dynamic of the book, and you almost stop worrying about everybody once this character is introduced, because it changes everything. And it's almost like a get out of jail free card. So in that sense, this character made the story. It changed everything about it. It changed the feeling of the story. It changed your concern over all the different characters, because there wasn't a lot at stake anymore once this character was introduced and their power was explained. Now for my conclusion and rating. I'm a big character guy. I love characters. This book isn't huge on plot, but that didn't bother me too much because I love character development. I love learning about characters, their backstories, their history, why they think the way they do, why they have the thoughts they do, why they have the positions they do. I love all that stuff, and I don't mind the character development. This book brings up some interesting questions. Should people with these abilities even exist? Should they be exterminated? Do they have a right to exist? Should they exist at all? And who has the right to determine that? Who has the final say in that decision? Is it one of their own? Is it someone else? Can these people be a benefit? Are they a menace? Are they supervillains? Can they be superheroes? Is it something that we shouldn't be playing with? I love the writing, how bright and vivid it was, how cinematic it was. That really was impressive to me. I like how the characters were really developed and had their own stories, and they walked that middle ground in the gray area. I thought the way their abilities were acquired was really interesting. I love the way they did that. I love the thought behind it, and the fact that you can have something either really lame or really great, just depending on how things go. While the story unraveled at a nice pace, I would have preferred more major events or something that more twists and turns. But that's not to knock the book. It's still a great book. It's a good read. But I would have liked more major events. I've seen and read some other reviews on this book that said they couldn't get into this book at all because none of the characters were good or likable. But that to me is what made this book interesting. It made the characters interesting, and it brought up some interesting questions. So that was something that I enjoyed about the book. I know some people don't, but that's something that I loved about it. From almost the beginning, the book is leading up to a climax, to a showdown. Now you have to say that it was a little bit of a letdown, but the last line in the book put a smile on my face. So for Vicious, I'm going to give it 3.5 near-death experiences out of 5. I really like the book. I think it's worth the read. It was almost a 4, but there's a few points in the book where I just was a little let down from it. But it is still a great read. If you love these kind of stories, I definitely recommend it. And I will be continuing in the series. So have you read Vicious? If you have, what did you think of it? What would your rating be? Thank you for watching my review, and I will talk to you soon.